It's Warner Brothers, and it's Smoke, and I got to get him committed to the insane asylum.
Did you know that Clint Eastwood, one of Hollywood's most iconic figures, had a secret daughter he never publicly acknowledged? For over 40 years, the truth about his hidden child remained locked away. Until now, after decades of speculation and whispers, his daughter is finally breaking her silence. Join us as we uncover the untold story of Clint Eastwood's secret love child and what she has to say. The rise of Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood was born on May 31st, 1930, in San Francisco, California, during one of the hardest times in American history, the Great Depression. His full name is Clinton Eastwood Jr. Life wasn't easy back then. His family moved around often because his father, Clinton Eastwood Sr., worked different jobs to help make ends meet. Sometimes he was a steel worker, and other times he worked at a gas station. His mother, Ruth Eastwood, also worked, doing jobs like being a factory clerk. They didn't have much money, and life was about surviving day to day. Moving from town to town made it tough for Clint to settle in one place, but it also shaped the kind of person he would become. Independent, quiet, and strong-willed. As a kid, Clint didn't stand out in school. His grades were average, and he didn't enjoy classroom learning. But even then, there was something different about him. He was tall. By the time he was a teenager, he was over 6 feet, and he had a calm, serious face that people noticed. He was quiet and didn't talk much, but he had presence. While school didn't catch his interest, other things did. He liked working with his hands, fixing cars, and learning how machines worked. He also had a love for music and taught himself how to play the piano, something he continued doing throughout his life. These early hobbies didn't seem connected to acting at all, but they showed he had creativity and focus. After high school, Clint didn't go straight into movies. He worked different small jobs. He was a lifeguard, paperboy, forest firefighter, and even a golf caddy. These jobs were simple, but they gave him real-life experience. Acting wasn't on his mind yet. That all changed when he was drafted into the U.S. Army in 1951, during the Korean War. He didn't go to battle, though. He was stationed at Fort Ord in California. This part of his life turned out to be very important, because it was where he met people connected to the movie business. One of them thought Clint had a great look for film and encouraged him to try acting. That single conversation would change his life forever. After leaving the Army, Clint followed that advice and started auditioning for roles in Hollywood. It wasn't easy. His first few years in the business were slow and full of rejection. He took acting lessons and started landing small parts, mostly because of his appearance. He signed a contract with Universal Studios, but the roles were tiny. Sometimes, he didn't even get credit in the films. Still, he didn't give up. He kept trying. Then, in 1959, everything changed. Clint got cast in a TV series called Rawhide. The show was a western about cowboys driving cattle across the West. Clint played Rowdy Yates, a young and tough cowboy. At first, he wasn't the main star, but viewers liked him. As the show went on, his role got bigger, and eventually, he became one of the leads. Rawhide ran for 8 seasons and made Clint a familiar face across America. It gave him confidence, steady work, and time to grow as an actor. After Rawhide, Clint took a big risk. He agreed to go to Europe to make a low-budget western with Italian director Sergio Leone. That film was a fistful of dollars. It introduced a new kind of cowboy, silent, tough, and mysterious. The movie was a hit, and Clint became known around the world. He followed it with For a Few Dollars More and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Together, these films became known as the Dollars Trilogy, and they made Clint a global star. But Clint didn't stop with acting. In 1971, he directed his first movie, Play Misty for Me, a thriller about a DJ and a dangerous fan. The movie was well received, and it showed that Clint had real talent behind the camera. As the years went on, he focused more on directing. In 1992, he made Unforgiven, a powerful Western that won 4 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director. Then, in 2005, he did it again with $1 Million Baby, another emotional story that won big at the Oscars. And while his career made headlines, it's Clint's personal life that holds some of the most surprising secrets. Let's get into that next. Clint Eastwood's public and private personas. Clint Eastwood has always been known for playing tough, quiet men on screen. In films like Dirty Harry, The Good, The Bad, and The Ugly, and Gran Torino, he often plays characters who speak little but act with strength and confidence. These roles made him a symbol of rugged masculinity around the world. People admired his cool and fearless image. But in real life, Clint Eastwood is much more private and reserved than the bold characters he plays in movies. He avoids public drama and rarely talks about his personal life. This difference between the man on screen and the man off screen has always made people curious. Even though Clint has been a huge star since the 1960s, he has never been someone who enjoys talking to the press about his private matters. He gives interviews, but he carefully chooses what to say and what to leave out. He doesn't open up about his emotions, family life, or relationships unless he feels it's truly necessary. Many people who worked with him have said that he is polite and professional, but also very quiet. He prefers spending time alone or with close friends, rather than attending big Hollywood parties. One of the most private parts of Clint Eastwood's life has been his relationships and children. Over the years, he has had several long-term relationships and has fathered multiple children, some of whom were not publicly known until years later. For decades, he kept many of these details out of the spotlight. Because of this secrecy, fans and the media spent years trying to guess what was really happening in his personal life. There were rumors, stories in tabloids, and speculation about who he was dating or how many children he had. But Clint almost never confirmed or denied anything. This made him even more mysterious to the public. Some thought he was hiding something. Others believed he was just protecting the people he cared about from the stress of fame. Clint's ability to stay silent about personal matters while still being a huge public figure is one reason people remain fascinated by him. Clint Eastwood's love life. Clint Eastwood's love life has been as full and dramatic as some of his most famous films. Over the decades, he's had several serious relationships, some public, some private, and some surrounded by mystery. While Clint has always kept his personal matters out of the spotlight, the women in his life played important roles, both emotionally and sometimes professionally. Let's take a closer look at 3 of his most significant and long-lasting relationships. Clint Eastwood married Maggie Johnson in 1953, long before he was a household name. At the time, he was a young man trying to find steady work in Hollywood. Maggie was supportive from the beginning. She stood by him during his early career when he was still getting small roles and wasn't earning much money. Their marriage gave Clint a sense of stability while he was chasing uncertain dreams in the film industry. As Clint's career grew during the 1960s and 70s, their marriage faced challenges. The fame, long working hours, and time apart put a strain on their relationship. Clint also began having affairs, which eventually made their relationship more distant. Although they remained legally married for decades, they were often living separate lives. By the late 1970s, they were basically estranged, even though they were still officially together. Together, Clint and Maggie had 2 children, Kyle Eastwood, born in 1968, and Allison Eastwood, born in 1972. Both Kyle and Allison would go on to have careers in the entertainment industry, Kyle as a jazz musician and Allison as an actress and director. Despite the ups and downs in their marriage, Clint remained involved in his children's lives. In 1984, Clint and Maggie officially divorced after more than 30 years of marriage. While their relationship had ended long before that, the divorce marked the formal close of a chapter in Eastwood's life. While Clint was still married to Maggie Johnson, he began a relationship with actress and dancer Roxanne Tunis. They met during the early 1960s while Clint was filming the TV show Rawhide. Their affair lasted for over a decade, even though Clint remained married to Maggie during this time. It was a deeply personal relationship, though it stayed out of the public eye for many years. In 1964, Clint and Roxanne had a daughter named Kimber. However, the public didn't find out about Kimber's existence until decades later. Clint kept her identity private for a long time, likely due to the fact that her birth took place during his marriage. Kimber was raised by Roxanne, and it wasn't until much later that she was publicly recognized as Clint's daughter. Despite the secrecy, Clint maintained a quiet relationship with Roxanne and supported Kimber financially. The relationship eventually ended, but Clint stayed in touch with Kimber, and they have since been seen together in public on occasion. One of Clint Eastwood's most famous and public relationships was with actress Sandra Locke. They met in the mid-1970s while filming The Outlaw Josie Wales, and their relationship quickly turned romantic. Sandra and Clint became a high-profile couple, and they worked together on several films over the next decade, including Every Which Way But Loose, Bronco Billy, and Sudden Impact. Their creative partnership was strong, and for a time, they seemed inseparable both on and off screen. Sandra moved into Clint's home, and they lived together for 14 years. During this time, she believed they had a committed and serious relationship. However, Clint was still involved with other women during this period, and it became clear that their relationship was not as stable as it appeared from the outside. The end of their relationship in 1989 was painful and very public. Sandra accused Clint of controlling her personal and professional life. She said that after their breakup, Clint had her removed from Warner Bros. Film projects and tried to block her from directing. She filed a lawsuit against him for palimony, a legal claim often used by unmarried partners who lived together. The case was settled out of court, but tensions between the two remained. Later, Sandra filed another lawsuit, claiming Clint and Warner Bros. Had made a false deal with her as part of the earlier settlement. That case was also settled. In her memoir, Sandra wrote openly about their relationship, including the heartbreak and betrayal she felt. Their time together was one of the most emotionally intense chapters in Clint Eastwood's personal life. It showed a different side of him, not the calm, controlled figure he usually presented to the world, but someone involved in a complex and deeply human relationship. Clint Eastwood's love life didn't slow down after his high-profile relationships in the 1960s through the 1980s. In fact, it continued to evolve well into the 1990s and 2000s, with new partners, children, and changing dynamics. In the 1980s, Clint Eastwood had a relationship with Jocelyn Reeves, a flight attendant. Their romance remained mostly private at the time. They were never married, and for many years, very little was known about their time together. However, their relationship resulted in 2 children, Scott Eastwood, born in 1986, and Catherine Eastwood, born in 1988. For a long time, neither child was publicly acknowledged as Clint's. Their birth certificates listed the father's name as not available, and it wasn't until Scott became an actor in his own right that the public began connecting the dots. Clint reportedly supported both children financially and maintained a relationship with them, even if it was quiet and away from the spotlight. Eventually, Scott began using the Eastwood name and confirmed in interviews that Clint was his father. Today, Scott Eastwood is a well-known actor, having appeared in major films like The Longest Ride and Fury. Catherine Eastwood has also pursued acting and screenwriting. Despite the early secrecy, Clint seems to have a present and proud relationship with both of them now. Clint Eastwood met actress Frances Fisher in the late 1980s while filming the movie Pink Cadillac. their relationship grew serious, and they lived together for several years. Frances was one of Clint's more public partners during this time, and their relationship marked a shift from the secrecy that had surrounded some of his earlier romances. In 1993, they had a daughter named Francesca Eastwood. Unlike some of Clint's other children, Francesca was acknowledged from the beginning. Clint and Frances co-parented her even after they broke up in the mid-1990s. Though their romantic relationship ended, they remained connected through their daughter and continued to speak positively about each other in interviews. Francesca has worked in both film and television and appeared alongside her family in the reality show Mrs. Eastwood and Company. Clint has been seen supporting her at events and celebrating her achievements, showing a warm father-daughter bond. In 1996, Clint Eastwood married TV news anchor Dina Ruiz. She was his second wife, and their relationship marked one of the most public periods of Clint's personal life. Dina and Clint first met when she interviewed him for a news segment. Their connection grew quickly, and they were married not long after. In 1996, the same year they got married, Dina gave birth to their daughter, Morgan Eastwood. This was a busy and happy time for Clint. He was directing and acting in major films, and Dina was by his side at many public appearances and red carpet events. In 2012, their family life was featured on the reality show Mrs. Eastwood and Company, which gave viewers a rare look into Clint's private world. The show focused more on Dina, Morgan, and the extended family, but Clint made occasional appearances. It was the most public Clint had ever been about his home life. However, by 2013, rumors of marital issues began to surface. Dina filed for legal separation, and their divorce was finalized in 2014. Even after the split, Dina and Clint remained respectful toward one another in public. They've both spoken positively about their co-parenting relationship and continue to support their daughter, Morgan. Shortly after his split from Dina Ruiz, Clint Eastwood was linked to Erica Tomlinson Fisher, who had previously been married to one of Dina's friends. This relationship was never officially confirmed by Clint or Erica, but they were seen together in public on multiple occasions, leading to speculation. The relationship, if it happened, appeared to be brief. There were no known children from this connection, and over time, the rumors faded. Like many aspects of Clint's personal life, it remained mostly unspoken by those involved. Clint Eastwood's romantic journey is complex, with many twists, quiet moments, and big revelations. Despite his guarded nature, each relationship added to the story of who he is as a partner and a father. But the biggest surprise in Clint's family tree came later, when a woman named Lorie Murray appeared, claiming to be his daughter. The hidden daughter. For many years, there were quiet rumors that Clint Eastwood had more children than he publicly acknowledged. As one of Hollywood's most famous stars, Eastwood was no stranger to media attention, but when it came to his private life, he kept things tightly guarded. While he eventually confirmed several of his children later in life, one name remained a mystery for decades: Lorie. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, the idea that Eastwood might have fathered a child who was kept secret floated through gossip columns and whispered conversations in Hollywood. Nothing was ever confirmed, and no names were ever publicly mentioned. Still, some fans and media outlets speculated that Eastwood's long list of relationships could have resulted in children born out of the spotlight. Hollywood during the 1950s and early 1960s was a place where image was everything. Studios worked hard to keep their stars looking clean, respectable, and easy to sell to the public. Any scandal, especially involving an unplanned pregnancy or a child born outside of marriage, could be considered damaging to a star's career. Because of this, many personal stories were hidden or erased completely from the public eye. At that time, it was especially hard for young, unmarried women who became pregnant. Many were pressured into giving up their babies for adoption or staying silent. Society looked down on unwed mothers, and families often kept such situations secret to avoid shame or public judgment. This culture of silence created the perfect environment for hidden stories like Lorie's to go unnoticed for years. As Eastwood became more famous in the 1960s and 70s, the media began digging deeper into his personal life. Reporters noted his multiple relationships, some overlapping, and the growing number of children. As time passed, patterns started to emerge. Timelines didn't always match up, and some details didn't add up. Still, without confirmation, it was impossible to say for sure whether Eastwood had a hidden child. Fans began to speculate more boldly by the 1990s, especially as more of Eastwood's children became publicly known.
For those who don't know the story, these three young Americans were in Paris or overseas in Europe on a trip.
But the mystery of the unknown daughter remained just that, a mystery. The story was buried beneath layers of gossip, secrecy, and unspoken rules about protecting Hollywood legends. Then, years later, the story finally broke open, and Lorie's name entered the spotlight. The discovery of Lorie Murray. Lorie Murray was born in 1954, during a time when society treated unplanned pregnancies much differently than today. She was adopted at birth and raised in the Pacific Northwest by loving adoptive parents. Growing up, Lorie had a stable, quiet life far from the spotlight of Hollywood. For most of her early years, she didn't know the details of her birth, nor did she have any idea that her biological father was one of the most famous actors in the world. As Lorie grew older, her curiosity about her roots began to grow. Like many adopted children, she eventually wanted to understand where she came from and who her biological parents were. She wasn't searching for fame or money. She simply wanted answers. Over time, that personal need turned into a focused journey. By the early 2000s, DNA testing and ancestry websites were starting to become more accessible to the public. These tools gave adopted children like Lorie the chance to connect with their biological families in ways that had never been possible before. Lorie used one of these services to submit her DNA and begin tracing her family history. When the results came back, they were unexpected and life-changing. Through distant matches and research, Lorie's DNA pointed directly to the Eastwood family. At first, it seemed hard to believe. Clint Eastwood was one of the most well-known actors and directors in the world. He had built a career over decades, becoming a household name. The idea that he could be her biological father was overwhelming. But as the DNA connections were verified and relationships mapped out, the truth became clear. Lorie was the biological daughter of Clint Eastwood. The story behind her birth slowly came together. In the early 1950s, before Clint had become famous, he had a brief relationship with a young woman. She became pregnant, but Clint was never told. At the time, he was just starting out, with no major roles or fame. The woman, likely under pressure from her family or society, made the difficult decision to place the baby for adoption. This wasn't unusual at the time. During the 1950s, it was common for unmarried women who became pregnant to be quietly sent away to have their babies. Many were encouraged or forced to give their children up for adoption. Families often made these arrangements without involving the biological father, especially if the relationship had ended or if the father was unaware of the pregnancy. In Lorie's case, her biological mother kept Clint out of the picture entirely. He had no idea the child existed. The adoption was handled privately and quietly.
No need for all that.
All what?
If you want to get acquainted, why don't you just say so?
With no contact between Clint and the adoptive family. As Clint's career took off in the late 1950s and 1960s, he went on with life, never knowing that he had a daughter out in the world. When Lorie eventually made contact with the Eastwood family, the situation was handled quietly and respectfully. Unlike a tabloid scandal or a public drama, this was a personal family matter. Lorie wasn't interested in making a big media splash. She simply wanted to know her story, and in doing so, she found her biological family. Clint Eastwood, known for his tough and stoic persona, reportedly accepted Lorie warmly. Over time, she became part of the extended Eastwood family. She has been seen with him at public events, including the 2004 Oscars, where she accompanied him and other family members. Despite the late discovery, Clint appeared to embrace her presence in his life. The entire journey remained largely private for years, with few public statements. It wasn't until journalists started piecing the story together through interviews, family accounts, and photographs that the full picture came into focus. Lorie's story is a powerful example of how long-buried truths can eventually come to light, even decades later. It also shows how family can be found in unexpected ways and how DNA technology has changed the way people connect to their past. Lorie breaks her silence. After discovering through DNA testing that Clint Eastwood was her biological father, Lorie Murray didn't rush to contact him. She took a cautious and respectful approach. Lorie had lived her whole life outside of the Hollywood spotlight, and she wasn't interested in creating drama or drawing attention. Instead, she wanted to understand her origins quietly and hoped for a chance to meet her father, not as a celebrity, but as a person. Lorie was in her 30s when she first learned the truth. By then, she had built a life of her own, with children and a strong sense of self. She wasn't searching for a father figure, but simply wanted to know where she came from. She knew that approaching someone as famous as Clint Eastwood could be complicated. There was always a risk of rejection or disbelief. But she also knew that the DNA results were clear. So, with the help of some mutual contacts and a respectful introduction, she reached out. Clint's reaction was not what many might expect from someone in his position. He didn't deny it, and he didn't try to hide from the truth. Instead, he was open, kind, and accepting. According to sources close to the family, Clint was genuinely surprised to learn he had a daughter he never knew about. But once he understood the situation, he welcomed her into his life. There was no anger, no resistance. He accepted that the child had been adopted without his knowledge and showed understanding rather than defensiveness. The early stages of their relationship were quiet and private. Lorie and Clint spent time getting to know one another without public attention. Over time, trust was built. They connected as family, even though they had missed decades together.
He's one of the only living cast members from Baby Doll.
Lorie later described their meeting in heartfelt terms. In a rare interview with Carmel magazine in March 2024, she said, "When I met my dad, it was love at first sight. We have unconditional parent/child love." That quote says a lot. It shows that their bond developed quickly, despite the lost time. For Clint, this was a deeply personal discovery. For Lorie, it was the start of a new chapter, one filled with belonging and answers to questions she had lived with for years. As their relationship deepened, Lorie was gradually introduced to the larger Eastwood family. Clint has several children from different relationships, and over the years, his family has become a large and blended one. Lorie was welcomed as part of that circle. She began appearing at family gatherings and eventually at public events. One of the most significant public moments came in 2018 at the premiere of Clint's film The Mule. Lorie appeared alongside Clint and other family members, including several of his children. She was not hidden or kept to the side. She stood proudly with the family, and photographers captured the moment. Though Clint never made an official announcement, the public appearance made things clear. Lorie was his daughter, and she was now part of the Eastwood family in every way that mattered. People close to the family say that Clint values his relationship with Lorie deeply. Despite being a famously private person, he made the choice to include her in family events and acknowledge her presence. This wasn't for publicity. It was simply what felt right. Lorie, for her part, has remained low-key and respectful of her father's public and private life. She never sought fame or media attention. Even after her story came out, she continued to lead a mostly private life in Washington state, where she lives with her husband. Her main focus has always been her own family, her children, and building a real relationship with Clint. Over time, Lorie also got to know her half-siblings. Clint's children come from various relationships, and while they have all led different lives, many of them have met Lorie and welcomed her. The family may not be traditional, but it's one that has found a way to grow and accept new chapters. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories like this.